Welcome to Kettlebell Corner, where strength meets theory, where we join you for a deeper dive into all things kettlebells. I'm Jeremiah Waylon, and that's Roger Parks. So let's get into it. Today, I want to talk about the Ballistics Algorithm. And let's break that down a little bit. First of all, Roger, hi.
Yes.
And what is the Ballistic Algorithm?
Hello.
Hi.
An algorithm is a set of steps that you're going to use to work through solving a problem. So
it's not my social media feed?
It might also be that.
Okay.
We created the ballistics algorithm to diagnose problems. What we saw frequently is somebody's swing, snatch, whatever, was just an absolute mess. And we didn't know where to start, what to do. So we brought it back to what we do is going back to the physics, because that is the unifying background behind all movement. So let's take the biggest things that are universal and let's start there. Once we established the physical properties necessary to move a kettlebell, we worked through a series of steps that needed to happen for a kettlebell to become a successful ballistic lift. And if any of these steps were missing, then we couldn't go to the next one. So what I mean by that is, let's take a snatch. That's a really complex movement. What we would see is people trying to go to the end of a lift. Let's say the snatch was banging at the top. This is one of the biggest influences for the algorithm, was this one piece of snatch advice. The snatch is banging at the top, therefore you're probably gripping too hard.
Too hard. Hold on loosely, but don't let go.
So, which actually is not true. You can grip the kettlebell as hard as you possibly can.
Hell yeah.
Move it appropriately. You're not going to bang at the top. It's not a grip issue.
Just might blow out your forearms, but whatever.
Yeah. Anyone who says it's a grip issue or solely a grip issue is wrong. I digress. What that particular piece of advice demonstrated is that people were missing all the other steps in the lift. So if you pull a lift apart and you look at all of the necessary things that must happen for a lift to proceed, now you have an order to coach in. Now you have an order to diagnose in. So the algorithm is this process of working through a lift to make sure you check the necessary things before you move to the next step. It doesn't 100%. mean that the lift doesn't need all of them. But for example, the first step, which we'll talk about in a moment, is stance. Stance is really the most direct influence on your balance that you're going to have. So you might do everything else, connecting to the bell, all the leg drive, all that stuff. You might do that perfectly, but if your stance is off, let's say you're too crowded, you don't have the space to move, then you still could get problems later in your lift that you need to diagnose, and you are not going to fix those problems unless you go back to the beginning, because it's actually a stance problem. So get your stance right, check that box, and then move to the next step in the algorithm, and then you can kind of weed out, okay, what's this next level of stupidity I'm participating in? And then we fix that, and then we move on to the other shenanigans.
Yeah. And so I distinctly remember this. We were spending countless hours in Kettlebell Club, and you would challenge myself and Coach Susie about, where should we go here? What do we see in here? What is this? And we always had these different answers, or it was random. And that's sort of how this algorithm came about. And it's been a complete game changer, one, for teaching it, for self-assessing, and just really dialing in technique for myself, for my students, everybody really. So that being said, without putting us out of a job when people understand this algorithm, let's start with step one. And you alluded to it already. Mm-hmm. It's the stance.
Yes.
And what does that mean, and why is that important to us?
So first of all, I want to establish that your stance is not just where you put your feet. Not just. It is where you put your feet, but your stance is your posture throughout the entire lift. So if you put your feet in a particular place and you look just fine, let's say we'll work with swing-based ballistics. just to limit it. If you go into vertical ballistics, you have to stipulate whether you're starting from a rack position or you're starting from the floor. So let's just stipulate with all these, they're going to be swing based. So we're going to go after our swing. We're going to go after our clean. We're going to go after our snatch. And that's a very particular type of snatch. And we're also going to stipulate that it starts from the floor, just for the sake of, let's avoid some confusion. So your stance, let's say you're fine in setting up for your hike, but as soon as, let's say you get to the top and you want to bring the bell down, maybe you are too wide, too narrow, etc. Maybe something is off and you actually see a visible wobble in your body. You see something that's not quite right. A common thing is, we've heard of the dreaded valgus, which is, the knees coming in, which is essential. It's necessary, but we're really talking about degree. So let's say we're going into the hike and we're fine, but as soon as we drive the feet or on the way down, we start to see the knees dip in more than we want. That's going to be a stance problem as well. Just because you look fine in the backswing doesn't mean that you're going to be fine throughout the lift. So your stance is your posture throughout the lift, and it is going to establish how you balance. Balance is a necessary step for all motion. If you can't balance, if you can't stand on your feet, you can't swing.
Can't generate force. You can't do anything.
You can't. No.
Yeah.
Go try and do a snatch on a frozen lake, please. I would enjoy watching. It's not going to happen.
I'm sure it's out there.
I'm sure. We need to establish how the body moves. So we need to establish your footprint. Are you too wide or too narrow? Now, not just balance, but we need to remember that ballistics are about force production, and the type of force production, it's contact force. And that contact is happening primarily with your feet against the ground. So if you're standing with your feet super wide, you're like, oh, well, he said balance is important. I want to get a wide stance because my balance is going to be better. Well, first of all, balance doesn't really work like that. Second of all, you may go so wide that you don't have good force production. So you not only need to give yourself enough room to move and enough room to balance, but you need to make sure that your feet are close enough to under your hips so you can make meaningful force. Too wide, you're not going to do it. So there are going to be some sweet spots, and we can't go into all of the potential problems in each part of the algorithm. These are just some of the things that you may want to look for. So are my feet wide enough to allow movement? Am I balanced? Balance from a physics standpoint, a really simple definition. Am I keeping my center of mass over my base of support? Your base of support in the case of these lifts will be your 2 feet. That footprint may deviate if you want to do a 1.5 stance, or even I'm sure someone's tried single-legged. If that's what you want to do, that's going to be your base of support. But you need to keep that center of mass over the base of support. Those are the main things. So your balance, do you have room to move? You might be cramped on the way down. Valgus may mean you just aren't good at creating force. And you also want to make sure that your feet are in a spot where you can generate force. A little note, though, before we move on to the next step, just because you understand where you need to be doesn't mean that you're able to do it. It could be an anatomical problem. And if you're looking to change your stance and you just can't get it right, maybe you need to get on the floor and do a little foam rolling, stretching, whatever it is you do, some mobility work, breathing, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And take your time with this. Set it up. Find, I think the key thing you point out is it's a sweet spot. It's what's going to work for you. So you're going to have to try that skill, the swing or whatever. Maybe that's the easiest place to start, and vary the stance and see how it feels. Get right. So now that you got your stance right, that posture throughout, you've addressed maybe where those issues are at. The next step we have here is the connection. And I think we have a good connection, Roger. But how can the people out there have a good connection? And what does that even mean for this algorithm in their kettlebell ballistic skills?
I don't know why you always make it awkward.
I have no choice.
Okay. Connection is about contact force.
I think you're the awkward one, by the way.
I definitely am. You're making me more and more uncomfortable.
Okay.
Sorry. Connection is about contact. So that's the type of force we're using. If you don't have contact, you don't have one body, and by body I don't mean just your body, but one part of your body influencing another body, the kettlebell. if you look at the sequence of a ballistic lift, you have the feet pushing into the floor. That force is moving up through the body. That's causing your joints to do what the joints do. You've got bones spinning in this direction and that direction. And all of that force and all of that spinning adds up to a force that translates into a kettlebell being ballistic. If you don't have proper contact, then either A, you're not going to get the motion, or B, the motion is going to be less effective than it could be. You don't want that force going in all kinds of crazy directions. So if we have problems with the ballistic, one of the first things you're going to do is check your connection to the bell. And that connection to the bell, if we work backwards, is going to be your hand. So we're going to check, make sure that your grip is appropriate for the lift you're doing, making sure that there's not a lot of extra space, because extra space in kettlebells means there are more directions for the force to go rather than just from the floor into your bell. You want to act you want to be a sturdy bridge between the floor and the bell. And if you don't have good contact, there are too many places for that force to go. We want to make sure that we're taking up we want to fill those vacuums. So going from your grip down, you're going to see, okay, how much of my arm can I make contact with against my body? Really important. So you have upper arm, you have lower arm. You're looking at where's your upper arm going to be against your torso, so your rib cage. If you have the type of body that allows this, and it is going to vary lift by lift, you can probably get your forearm in contact with somewhere around the pelvis. So me, for example, if I'm doing a 2-arm swing, I can't get contact of my forearms on my body, but with a 1-arm swing or a 1-arm skill, I can. So the connection, the way I usually describe it to my new students, and I've mentioned it, in these various videos, is I really like for a swing, the analogy of a bow and arrow. And the contact is putting the arrow on the bowstring. If you can't put the arrow on the bowstring, why would you expect an arrow to fly? It's not going to make sense. So if it's kind of on there, not really well, it's not going to fly in a good direction. But going back to the algorithm, once we have our stance set, the first thing we need to do to make our force effective is to make sure we have good connection. If we're not connected to the bell, then we're focusing on lifting the bell with the upper body, which we don't want to do. And something I say pretty frequently is you don't swing a kettlebell, you connect it to your body, you move appropriately, the swing's going to happen.
Yeah, the bell's going to go where you send it.
Absolutely.
With your body movement.
Exactly right. So, but that doesn't happen unless you can connect the bell to your body mass well. So that's the second part of the algorithm.
Yeah, and getting that hike up in there, getting those arms firmly placed on the body right then and there is the first step. That's the first connection, and that's gonna lead us to the next piece of the algorithm, which is
one more thing is also the I hesitate to just talk about lat engagement because I think that's really vague for people.
Right.
There are a lot of muscles.
Some people don't even know where the hell the lats are at.
Most people don't. Most people don't.
It's jargon, Rogers. Get that.
It really is. It's accurate, but a lot of people don't have a good grasp. But rather than just saying lat connection, there is a series of muscles that connect the upper and the lower body. When we go back to this bridge idea, we want to make sure that they are engaged as much as possible to successfully bring the force from the lower to the upper body. If you see, shoulders hiking or overly rotated, you're not going to have a great connection in that respect as well. So
yeah, you'll have a gap essentially.
You will, for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. So when you have that gap, you don't have the connection that is desired. So when you think about that, I don't want to say be tight, but be engaged. You want to be engaged. And so you now engage that arms to the body in that hike position. We're ready to go. And you're connected, you have to leg drive. And that's the next step in the algorithm. And that could, mean one thing only. Is that just pushing your feet into the ground pretty hard? Or is there more to it?
Yes and no.
Oh, good.
It is just pushing your feet into the ground. But, here's the big but.
Oh, yeah, booty.
The impulse to drive the feet into the ground doesn't always engage the muscles you want to engage. And this is a common experience where I just worked with someone new the other day. his initial swings were pretty much upper body dominant. And me watching him, I knew he wasn't quite where he needed to be because he wasn't snappy. And as you've been coaching for a long time, you can see there's just a certain snap that a good ballistic has. And you know it when you see it. And I knew he wasn't quite there, but he thought he was. And then when I explained one cue, which is part going back to the connection with a swing, rather than thinking about lifting the bell with the arms, think about continuing to pull the arms against the body as you get all the way into the standing plank. That improved his engagement. It took his upper body out of the movement. There were a couple of really bad swings, and then suddenly the third one was just this tremendous snap, really explosive swing. And the look on his face was like, whoa, what did I just do? And he talked about how easy it felt. You know it. It's one of those, you can't unring that bell once you feel that proper snap of really moving your lower body to initiate this chain of events. You know it, and your upper body is just out of the movement. When I have people who are like, yeah, I need to stop swinging for a little while. My shoulders are getting a little jacked. I was like, if your shoulders are getting jacked, you're not swinging a kettlebell right. There's something wrong there. So
we're going to use the algorithm to solve that.
Yeah. yes, we will. The leg drive suffers from the way I think our brains are wired, and we have all this sensory information that goes from our hands because we also are so dominant with our hands. So our brains are really aware of what's in our hands. And as soon as you grasp something, your brain's really going to be aware of it. You're paying attention to your hands.
I got this bell.
Exactly right. So the beginner lifter is going to think about lifting the bell. Well, that's priming the arms and the upper body. And what you're going to get is what we call top-down movement, meaning you'll start to see at the beginning of the lift, maybe a jerk of the arm, the chin will lift. You'll see the upper back lift before the legs really engage. And that is a sign that although you are driving your legs, the question really becomes what percentage of this is lower body and what percentage is upper body? Because even when people know how to do it the right way, and they are using leg drive, it's like, well, that's like 45% leg drive.
Yeah.
Now we're
and
at
you're going to go
65.
back. Yeah. And you're going to go back when you do that top down, you're going to lose the connection. It's just going to happen.
Sure.
So now double back on the algorithm and there you go.
Exactly right. So we need to make sure that we get the connection, keep the connection, and you really are just focusing on standing up. One thing that I point out a lot, this comes from more kettlebell jargon, is the idea of, it's all in your hips and thrusting the hips forward. You don't want to thrust the hips forward. The hips are going to move forward on their own. Just push your feet straight down. The rest of it's just going to happen the way it needs to. So leg drive is the simplest part, but it's something that you need to understand, which is why we don't do a crazy amount of deadlifting when prepping people to swing, because they don't learn all the lessons they need to learn. We use things like goblet cleans and jumps and those sorts of things that focus on the vertical force that makes the bell swing.
Yeah. And that, just thinking about a clue, I was also working with a new student the other day, and she was standing up, but it wasn't getting that pop. And I go, just think about jumping instead. Just jump, but don't leave the ground. And then boom. And then it connects, and then the bell's ballistic and life is good. And from that point, you need to redirect the bell, which is the next step in the algorithm. So redirecting the bell, and we're not talking about, acting here. What do we mean by redirecting the bell? And why is that such a crucial step in this algorithm?
All of the various lifts, even a swing, are going to have a destination. The swing has the easiest path. That's, there, you can argue there is no redirection. You're just letting it happen.
It's pretty straightforward.
It's semantics, and I don't care. Let's just say that one doesn't have it. I really don't care. There really is very little redirection, although you do need to understand that there is a separation between the bell and the body. So when you're going into a ballistic and you are moving all the way through the leg drive is going to stop once you reach that standing plank position. So your knees are locked out, your hips are locked out, you're standing up straight.
Definitive
That is the end of the leg drive. The redirect, regardless of where the bell goes, you need to have a few things happen. You need to physically be able to get stiff in that position, because that is the handoff of the force that comes from the floor into the bell. And if you get soft and soggy in that position, that handoff of force, that transfer force is not going to be very effective. So you need to make sure that you can stay wide through the chest. You need to make sure that your back is engaged. You need to make sure that your midsection, your entire midsection, not just the front, but the sides and the back, all of that stuff is on, so to speak. So that force transfer from the floor makes it into the bell. So that's the first step, and all the ballistics are going to have that. The redirect is the moment the bell goes away from your body and starts doing whatever it's doing on its own.
Yeah.
So you need the initial stiffness, and that's going to be the same for all all ballistics, but specifically for the three we're talking about. When you have a clean or a snatch, you have bells that end up in different directions, different destinations rather. So if you look at a clean, you have a bell that ends up on the outside, if you're doing a right clean, on the outside of your right forearm. If you're doing a snatch, it's going to end up on the back of your right forearm. So we have one that's to the side, one that's higher. We want to look at this phase just to see where's the bell coming off? What's the trajectory? Are we getting the diagonal that we need in the clean? If you look, for example, as the clean comes out of the hole, out of the backswing, it needs to go from somewhat between your legs. Maybe it'll be slightly to the right if you're doing a right clean, but it's going to start in one destination and you're going to get a nice diagonal on the other. You're going to get a nice diagonal from where it comes out to where it finishes. Right. The snatch, it's going to come up straight up your body, more or less, if you can do that. So in these situations, you're looking at, is the elbow flaring, especially with the snatch. What you'll see is the arm will start sometimes to pull. Maybe your leg drive is great, but as soon as the bell's going up, you're kind of pushing and pulling. Maybe you're not finishing with a good pop, but you want to get it from the vertical plank to the destination. And this is where a lot of the real specific picky coaching comes from. The basic idea, though, is take your straight line path from where the bell starts to where it needs to go. The most efficient path is going to be the one that adheres to the straight line. That's not always possible. Yeah, but we want to have that ideal at least in place, and that's what the redirection is all about. And again, this algorithm is we just need to coach this piece. This isn't all that can go wrong, and this is where there is a lot that can go wrong. We just need to say, okay, everything, the stance is good, the connection's good, the leg drive is good. This is where things are going wonky. It's in this direct phase. Now we can start getting into the magic of coaching and getting more specific with where things need to be.
Yeah, and that's, again, to reiterate, that's really the essence of the algorithm, is to understand where you need to address something instead of just spitting out, tighten your grip or squeeze your butt or whatever it is that is commonly referred to, and we've all used them, but we've since grown. So we've redirected the bell. I got it overhead, and I need to do a reconnection, I believe, and I can't just end the snatch at the top, or I can't just end my swing at the outset skirt. What do I do? How do I reconnect? And what is the important reason we need to do this step in the kettlebell ballistic algorithm?
This one's about managing momentum, really. I don't want to get into momentum and impulse and things like that because it's
perhaps later.
Yeah, perhaps later, or just read the book.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later too.
The idea, though, is if you're going to accept the bell, you got this big piece of iron. Let's take the snatch, okay, the most extreme of all of these. You've got this thing overhead, and you want it to come down at a significant speed, and it's essentially hurtling towards your crotch.
Yeah.
You probably want to make sure that you're handling this return to the backswing, to either or the backswing or the hike or to park the bell rather. You want to make sure you're handling this safely. The way to do that is with more mass. If you're casting the bell forward and you are just letting your arm kind of take the brunt of it, you can justify doing that. You will get more distance to create more force. And there are other styles of kettlebells that may benefit from that. But this is hard style, and this is not what we do. We want to be aware of what our objectives are. And here we're looking to use our muscles, and we're looking to move quickly. And when we do that, the way that we can stay safe is by reconnecting the arm back to the body. So if you look at the reconnection, it is really just the connection in reverse. So if ideally speaking, the snatch goes from the leg drive, you're standing up, you should start to see the forearm. The forearm's going to swing up until it's kind of in a vertical direction. And then you're going to watch the upper arm just slowly start to peel off of the torso and sail up toward the top. We want to make sure that we're reversing that process. So if it's the snatch and that reconnection, I'm doing a subtle lean back so the bell doesn't hit me in the head. And then I'm trying to just squeeze my upper arm back into my armpit, and I'm trying to move the upper arm along the torso. Because once I do that, then I can start to move as a unit. Then when I move into the backswing, I can do that effectively. But one other thing to note is the more mass that you have moving as one unit into the backswing, the better you can do the reload phase. The better you can have that tension and elasticity that really is free energy. It's automatic. We want to manage the potential energy. We want to manage all the tension. That is going to help us in our next lift. But if we're not doing that, we might get a ton of motion from the bell moving forward, like we're just kind of chucking it out there. But if our timing is not spot on, which it rarely is with this technique, we're going to really miss out on a lot of the automatic force for the next snatch. So this is really just about getting your arm back on your body, because one of the most common things, I think, if you ask any coach who's been coaching for a while, one of the most common problems with any ballistic is breaking back into the backswing too soon. And this 100%. is a connection problem.
Yeah. And it's going to require patience to get that connection and high emphasis on making that part of each of these ballistic lifts stick, because where's your back going to hurt? Your back's going to start hurting, one, if you're doing that top down moment where you probably don't have good connection, and two, when you're breaking those hips back before the arm is reconnected to the body. It's just where that's where it happens is without fail, If
you break down each step of the algorithm in stages, so we said that the leg drive starts from the hike or the hike or the backswing, and it lasts until you reach it. You reach the standing plank. And then the redirection happens however that happens. The reconnection is going to start from the end of your skill, or halfway through your skill rather, and it's going to last until the arm is pointed pretty much straight down to the ground with whatever skill you're doing. If I were to take a still like a snapshot of you in any of these skills, I should see your arm pointing down, straight down to the floor, and as much of your arm is on your body as possible, and then you're going to move into the next phase.
Yeah, it's sort of like a broken clock. It's right twice a day.
Yeah.
And sort of like your kettlebell ballistic skills. Yep. Your arm should be pointing down 2 times per skill, more or less. And then finally, you've reconnected the arm, and let's reload this sucker. And you kind of alluded to that a little bit ago about what that means, but elaborate and tell us why that's important.
The reload phase is going to start once you begin your backswing. And we're going to assume that we're going into another rep rather than just hiking or parking the bell. However, the steps will be the same. The arm's going to be down. You're going to move into the backswing, and there are a few things that can go wrong here, and there are 2 that I look at in particular. One is, are you shifting or are you folding? Often people will fold, meaning their hip joint stays right where it is over the foot, almost vertically in line, like they're still standing up, and their spine folds forward. That exposes the spine to more torque if things go wrong, which is obviously a safety concern, but it also misses out on some extra force and elasticity that you can get by shoving those hips back. So the most common cue I hear is, close the car door with your butt. You're thinking about actively bringing the pelvis with the arm and the bell where it's connected to your body behind your heels as much as possible. Even go back to that bow and arrow analogy. Your hip shoving back is like pulling back the bowstring.
Be active in that. Pull it back.
Yes, very, very active.
Don't be lazy in that reload, because then you're just probably folding.
Yep. You don't want to do that. Again, safety and safety issue. You're also missing out on some power. The other part where things get a little dicey is what's called the turnaround. And that's the exact moment when the bell is either going to come forward to park or it's going to go into the next skill. What we see sometimes is the trajectory can be off. Maybe the bell is flipping up and hitting you in the butt. Maybe you're spending too much time back there. So there's something with tissues. We look at it with plyometrics. It's something called the amortization phase. And when you load muscles with a stretch, you're going to get a stretch reflex, which is going to be a firing, and that firing will help you into your next ballistic skill. If you spend too long down there, that actual force will dissipate.
Yeah, it's like a battery, right?
Yeah, it'll run out. It's a very fast battery, but yes, it'll run. Quick. It'll wear out, right? You'll lose juice. So you want to find the maximum amount of time to be back there, because time and force are very intimately related. So if you get back there and you're immediately going, you're not going to be able to get that stretch. You want to get the full stretch. So this is going to be something you're going to have to feel out. But if you spend too much time back there, that stretch reflex is going to dissipate. You'll still be able to get the bell out of the hole probably, but it won't be a snappy, automatic looking snatch, swing, clean, whatever it is. And you will notice the difference, especially when you're doing your swings and your snatches, your lifts where you do have a longer sequence of lifts.
Yeah, and you're trying to do multiple, so take advantage and get the actual training effect you're going for. The ballistics by nature are fast and explosive. Otherwise, they'd probably call them something else. I mean, without getting into the details of the definition of ballistic, which perhaps another time.
Well, so real quick, a ballistic, as we define it, it just means that the bell's only influenced by gravity. Meaning it's moving up at a rate faster than gravity is moving it down. And if you were to completely let go of the bell, it would either hover for a moment or it would continue to rise.
Yeah. So, and you can do that. That's like magic. It's a magic trick we all have that we can develop in our bodies. That's the algorithm. You got your stance, your connection, your leg drive, your redirection, your reconnection, and your reload. Do we have anything else regarding the algorithm? See what I did there?
Yeah, I see that. No, I think we're good.
All right. Well, you can actually dive deeper into this, as I'm sure we will, for each little piece. But you can get this from Roger's book, Kettlebell Ballistics, The Essentials to Kettlebell Training. And from there, you can fire up and learn exactly what we're talking about. So check us out, download the Bells app, and be sure to follow, subscribe, and put a comment down below regarding this episode. Whether you heard airplanes or doors opening, this is our life. Anyways, thanks for listening. And as always, stay strong, y'all.